Hello and welcome to the second episode of Taking Control of Cancer, the podcast brought to you by the North East London Cancer Alliance. I'm Steve Bland, and think of this podcast as a little bit like a how-to guide to help you overcome common cancer myths, fears and barriers, and to help improve cancer prevention, diagnosis, treatment and care. We're trying to give both patients and healthcare professionals tangible things that they can do and you can do when it comes to cancer. And while we know that not all cancers are preventable or curable, there are things that we can all do that can make a massive positive difference to the health and well-being of not just ourselves, but our family, our friends and our colleagues. This episode is all about how to stay positive after a cancer diagnosis and how important that is in the story of a cancer diagnosis and cancer treatment. Now, our guest today is Kevin Kibble, who is a prostate cancer patient. He's recently joined the North East London Cancer Alliance as a patient partner, and he has lived experience of his prostate cancer. He's from Hackney and he's passionate about the benefits of prehab and keeping fit. And he's also set up a community group for men to get together and share their experience of prostate cancer. He's a really amazing guest, and I hope you listen to what he has to say. Because it's really important. Also joining me today is Dr. Angela Wong. Angela is the Chief Medical Officer here at the North East London Cancer Alliance and a real driving force behind improving cancer diagnostics for residents right across North East London. Angela and Femi Odewale, who's the Managing Director of the Alliance, will be popping up during the series just to give us a little bit of insight into the work that they do and the work going on within the Alliance. So here is Kevin.
Okay, well, I had no symptoms, so my cancer was discovered almost accidentally. Well, it was accidentally, really. In 2000, I think it was October 2022. I had a really nasty chest infection and didn't seem to want to clear up. I thought I was better. I went back to the gym, but then felt really rough again. And the first GP appointment said, "Oh, it's post-viral syndrome. You know, you're just tired." Didn't get much better, and then one night I had a temperature of over 100 and something. So, you definitely got a chest infection. So, we dialed 111 because my wife was that worried about me, and I was absolutely melting. But I was drinking gallons as well as like they told me to. So when I did get to speak to the GP the next day, I said, "Look, okay." The antibiotics fine. The only other thing is that I'm drinking so much, I'm getting up half the night peeing. He said, "Well, perhaps we'll add a PSA test on as well, just to make sure while we're about it."
Yeah.
First, I'd heard of it, and
did they explain what a PSA test was?
No, I had to look it up because it was just in passing.
Yeah.
I thought it's a bit odd. Anyway, didn't think anything of it. It didn't occur to me that there would be anything wrong because I didn't have any symptoms. And I just naturally assumed I'd been drinking so much water with the high temperatures that was why I was getting up in the middle of the night. I had a call from the surgery about 3 or 4 days after I'd done the blood test down there and said, "Your PSA is a little bit raised. It's 5.8. Not very high for a guy of your age. Probably a reaction to the antibiotics. So when you've completed the test, leave it another week. And then we'll do another blood test and see how that goes, and just to make sure." Fine. I didn't worry too much about it. I went and had the blood test again. It was about 10 days, I guess, after all that gone through. Got a text from the GP surgery 2 days later to say it's gone up a little bit more. Again, nothing to worry about. It's 6.2, but we should have a conversation about it. So we booked in a telephone conversation. And the doctor said to me, "Well, your age, if you were 2 years older, I wouldn't do anything. You're 68, I wouldn't do anything if you were 70. But you have 3 choices. We can watch and wait and just monitor it every sort of 3 months. Or you can come in for a physical examination in the surgery, or I can refer you to urology at the Homerton." And we were due to be moving house. We were supposed to be moving to Cornwall, and we were getting very close to exchange contract date. So a little bit touchy about this, and I said, can I be referred? Because I'd just rather make sure there was nothing sinister going on down there. And the GP was great. He said, yeah, absolutely no worry, no problems. You'll hear within the 10 days that you're supposed to hear. And to be fair, within, I think it's 5 or 6 days, I got a call from the Homerton saying, you've got a telephone appointment tomorrow.
Right.
And so I had this conversation with the urologist. He got all my results. And again, he was saying, your age and things it's nothing much to worry about, I wouldn't think. I'll book you in for an MRI scan just to make sure sometime in the new year. And I was thinking, how does that fit in with my moving schedules and all that kind of stuff? And we're having a conversation. He said, oh, by the way, is there any other history of cancer in your family? And I said, yeah, both my mother and my sister died from breast cancer. And the tone of the conversation changed in an instant. And he said, well, just hang on a minute. And then he said, well, can you get to the Homerton the day after Boxing Day? And I said, isn't that a bank holiday? He said, yeah, but the radiologists are working. And we'd like to do the MRI scan then. And, and I thought, this is not so good. He said, while I'm about it, I'm going to book you some biopsies for the 19th of January. And if we don't need them, we can cancel them. I said, okay, fine. So I went into a hospital on the 27th of December. Great time to go into the hospital. No one there. It's absolutely brilliant. Get seen quite promptly. Yeah. Had the MRI scan, and the urologist phoned me the next day. He said, can't quite see what's going on there. It's not very clear, the imagery. So I'm going to wait and see if I get any further images back that are clearer. So we'll carry on and keep the biopsy appointments on. So I said, okay, fine. And I was getting a bit touchy about this then. And I think it was either New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, might even be New Year's Day, I got a call from the hospital saying, we've had a cancellation, we'd like you to come in for your biopsies early. And I thought, do people cancel these things? I suppose they might do. But yeah, I'd like to know sooner.
Are any alarm bells starting to ring for you?
It's just getting worse and worse.
Things are being kind of sped up a little bit.
Yeah, and no one was saying we're concerned at this stage. It's always reassuring, but just like to make sure and things. And I'm thinking, that's okay, but I don't like the way this is going. And I said, well, we're going to put the move on hold. I'm sorry for the buyers and the people we're buying from. If there is anything wrong, I want my healthcare in London, not in Cornwall, which is where we were moving to.
Thank you, first of all, for sharing your journey with us and your story. And it's just a reflection for me as a clinician how some of the words that we say have such a big impact, and whether we sort of fully consider it enough. For example, when they said PSA without giving an explanation, it's all the parts that we could potentially intervene better or use the tone.
I think I had the appointments on my phone in the kitchen on speakerphone, so that my wife could hear them as well. So I didn't want to miss anything, and we were looking at each other thinking, this doesn't sound right. And so we had the conversation after rearranging the MRI, and then rearranging the biopsies. Thinking, this doesn't sound good, but it is what it is. Let's go and check. And I went into the hospital for my biopsies, and that was a bit brusque. I was in the day centre, day theatre centre, is it, or something, daycare centre, and the guy who was going to do the biopsies sat me down and said, right, this is what we're going to do. This is how it works. I tried to call you yesterday, and I thought, you didn't, because the phone would have told me, And then I think I found out they had my old landline number still on my data thing. But anyway, so we sat down and he talked through that. This is how it happens. And he said, and I can see where the cancer is, so I'm going to do it. And this is the first time I'd been told. And it was just matter of fact like that. And I didn't hear the rest of what he said it was going to happen. It was a complete shock that they could see cancer already. And I was thinking, because I'd looked it up and I thought, as much as I could from Prostate Cancer UK's website, I'd done a bit of research onto that and what have you. And I was thinking, oh, crikey. So I tried to phone my wife, no reception in the hospital. So I sent her a text. And I thought, it'll get there eventually. The whole experience of the biopsy was miserable. There was two of us going, and I was the second one, and we had to walk through the hospital in our gowns from the daycare centre to the mini theatres where it's carried out. I then spent an hour and a half sitting in my gown. There was just two chairs in a little alleyway with people walking backwards and forth. And I hadn't taken a paper with me or anything. But that was just a miserable time. The biopsies itself, because I hadn't really listened to what he was going to say, it took me by surprise at how uncomfortable it was. But then they just explained what was happening again, and the nurses actually who were there as well were brilliant. That I kind of got used to it. As it was coming to an end, there's another technician in there, and I didn't catch his name, looking at the screen on the other side of where everything's taking place. And he just said, right, well, we're going to refer you for a bone scan. We do this all the time with these kind of things. You'll get a call from the Whittington, because that's where the nuclear medicine is. And I think, right, okay. So when my wife came and picked me up, we already knew that I had prostate cancer, but now had it spread to the bone? Because by now I knew that was the likely path. If it was going to spread, that was where it would go, and that I would be in a lot more trouble if that's what had happened. And then again, it was very rapid. Maybe 3 or 4 days later, I got a call from the Whittington, booked me in for about 5 days later. And I was right at the end of the afternoon, the last one they did. And so we got there just after lunchtime and had the poisons put in the system to sort of start glowing in the dark. And went in and had my scan done. Came out, got dressed, came out, and it was my body was up on this monitor, and I was thinking, oh, is that me? Is that my skeleton? And the radiographer said, yeah, and I need you to go back into the scanner because there's some bits here and here that I want to do enlargements of because I think the doctors will want to see that. And I think, oh, that again just doesn't sound very good at all. Anyway, we got through all that and went home, and a pretty miserable time. Got a call from the urologist to say, right, we're going to put everything that we've found, all the details we've got, we're going to put before the MDT. And you mean the multidisciplinary team? Please don't, try and baffle me with science. Yeah. And I know what it is, and I know what it does. Yeah, and you'll have an appointment. It'll be the 31st of January. So almost within 6 weeks, this has all happened within about 6 weeks, and it's just felt more and more uncomfortable and nastier as I've gone along. And on the 31st, we had a telephone appointment. So we're sitting in the kitchen again with the phone in the middle of the dining room, the kitchen table. And the guy said, well, no beating about the bush, you've got advanced prostate cancer. It's spread to your pelvis, lower spine, and ribs. It's no surgery can fit for you, and it's not the kind of cancer that will take chemotherapy. So really, the only solution we've got for you the only treatment we've got for you is hormone treatment, and we want to start it straight away. So it's a lot to take in all at one go. So that afternoon, the telephone meeting was about 10, 11 o'clock, I think. He said, I'll send the prescription to the pharmacy here in the hospital. Can you get down to pick it up this afternoon? Yeah, okay. Jumped on the bus, went down to the pharmacy and got the tablets you have to take for 3 weeks. I think it's bicalutamide, I think. Yeah. And then you'll come back in after 1 week of that and have your first prostate injection. And I can't remember the name of the drug that actually is, but it's prostate. And he phoned me the next day to see how I was, to be fair. He said, don't like telling people over the phone, like, that's the way it is, sort of thing. But when you come in for your injection, I'm on call that day, I will come in and see you. And that first experience in the hospital with the urology team there was actually quite okay. They were just very apologetic. Sorry, we can't do anything. It just felt really, really awful. I felt very, very low. And said, from here on, we're going to hand you over to oncology. And, they'll pick it up from here. But you've got your key worker here. That didn't last very long. But you'll hear from your oncology team next. And we did. We got the first appointment. It was late in the afternoon. And I think it was 2 weeks. I still had a week of these tablets left to take. And the oncologist, I didn't see the actual doctor that I'm under now. I saw one of her assistants. But they were brilliant. And it was a much more positive conversation.
So was that kind of the first moment where you could feel some positivity? You'd had so much bad news before that point. And after that point, did you feel like maybe you had a plan?
Yeah. Up until that point, we after the first, given the diagnosis on social media, we were thinking, right, I better get my affairs in order. You know, it sounded that bad that I was not long for this world. So when we sat down with them and they said, right, you can't have surgery because if we have surgery, it'll make it worse. But where your burden of cancer isn't particularly high, so radiotherapy might do more harm than good at the moment. So we don't need to think about that at the moment, but that is an option for the future. These drugs we're going to put you on, they will, basically how that's going to do it, it'll reduce your testosterone to 0, hopefully, and your PSA will drop like that, and that'll cut off the feed to your cancer. That's the treatment. That's how it's going to work. And we've got patients who've been on this for years. So, there are side effects, and they went through the side effects for me. And Penny, my wife, was with me, and she said, that sounds just like my menopause. And the oncologist said, yep, that's what it is. Yeah. I'll see you in 8 weeks. So, and that's how the journey went. And I'm now going every 12 weeks. My last appointment was in December. My next appointment is next Tuesday, in fact. And my last reading was 0.01, my PSA. So basically just a trace. Yes, I've got the side effects of the hormone treatment, and they are pretty gruesome.
What kind of side effects are we talking about there, Kevin?
Hot flushes. They're in the middle of the night. They're dreadful. They're just ghastly. But it's what it is. The fatigue. All of a sudden, fatigue will hit you, and it's like running into a wall, and you just stop. If I'm out walking the dogs, and I just have to. No, we're going to have to sit down because I can't go any further. That lessens each time, and I haven't had that quite so badly for a while now. The emotional upset, I didn't realise how much it was going to play with my emotions, mood swings, and what have you, and brain fog. I don't always used to be so stuck for words. Normally I can rattle off quite some, but sometimes I just can't remember a word, and that's quite frustrating. So those are kind of the main things that I get. And I get a little bit of muscle ache and joint ache. I think it has exaggerated the osteoarthritis that I didn't know was lurking there quite as badly until the bone scan showed it all up for me. Thanks very much. So there are all those kind of little things going on that one has to be careful of. And it's then, once you know that, you say, right, now we know what we're dealing with. What's the best way? Yeah. What's the best way forward? And that's when we start thinking, we've got to think more positively about this. Set myself a target. I'm going to live till I'm 75. That's 6 years down the line. Because the average lifespan for someone with this diagnosis seems to be between roughly 4 to 5 years. But for that to be the average, some must live a lot longer. I want to be on that longer trajectory. So how am I going to do that? And all those kind of things, we started thinking, let's make a plan about this.
So it sounds, Kevin, like your journey to get a diagnosis and to get a plan and to be able to kind of think, looking ahead, where it was going to go was quite stop-start. Would that be fair? And maybe, Angela, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on, how you would assess, what you've heard so far without obviously pointing any fingers, because it's really difficult, isn't it, obviously? But how would you kind of assess what you've just heard from Kevin?
So for me, as a reflection, you almost have two stories. So the one story in terms of you get the blood test, you go to have the MRI leads to a biopsy, the biopsy leads to a bone scan, the bone scan leads to actually starting treatment. On paper, that could seem relatively quick, and that you've got to the treatment and that treatment has had the impact in lowering your PSA level, the blood test marker for prostate cancer. But then on the other hand, your emotional journey and the communication could be improved by a long shot. There's the positivity to get to that after 6 weeks, rather than potentially supporting throughout the diagnostic journey and having those tests. And also, as I really reflect upon the sort of downplaying of something, but on the other hand, sort of saying, well, actually, we've just got to look at those two shadows, because of course that will, the sort of 0 to 60 in terms of alarm bells.
You second guess everything, don't you? When you're in
exactly.
these,
You really do overthink it. The worst case scenarios come into your head and you cannot stop that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how positive you try to feel about things, you can't blank that out, because you've got cancer, it's incurable. But you've got to move on from it being, the fact that it's incurable doesn't mean that it's not treatable. Yeah. And that's quite a leap to make if you don't know exactly what's going to happen to your body, if you don't know how the drugs work, and all those kind of things. So we spent quite a bit of time researching it. We know not everything on the internet is true, so don't look for immediate random remedies. But things like the Prostate Cancer UK website was really helpful, and I phoned the nurses on there as well, and they were very helpful in explaining what all the terminology meant. But when I gave her my diagnosis sheet came back from the hospital, the nurse said, "I can't interpret your diagnosis." I said, "No, I know what that means. What I don't know is what does that actually relate to in terms of where in my body is this? What level is the cancer? Is it grade 3? This is what I was told it was. And yes, it is. So I now know that it's medium aggressive. It's not as bad as it could be, but not as good as I'd like it to be. So all those kind of things you then start putting into a balancing act in your own mind as to what is it that I've actually got and what is it actually going to do to me. First thing I found, finding out about the family links between these hormonal cancers was a complete eye-opener to me. I should have been aware that my mother and my younger sister, died from breast cancer. And I now know, I didn't then, that if a close family member dies from breast cancer, you're 2.5 times more likely to get prostate cancer. If they die young, you're 2.5 times again more likely to get prostate cancer. So I should have been high risk, really, had I known it, or had my surgery here in London known it, because my family live out in Suffolk. My mother's brother died from prostate cancer, but I didn't know that was exactly what he had. All those kind of things meant I should have been on a screening program. Somehow or other, I should have known. But if you're not told these things, if the information is not readily out there, so now I tell everybody, sorry language, but I tell everyone, get yourself tested, and when I put on my Facebook group, it took me a while to actually tell it open that this is what I've got, and guys, get yourself tested, and ladies, get your men tested. It's a simple blood test. It's not always 100% accurate, but it's a damn good start.
And that's such an important message, isn't it? Not just for prostate cancer, but right across all tumour types, all cancers, of understanding your body, getting checked so that we can catch it earlier, because we know that treatments and surgical treatments, chemotherapies, immunotherapies are coming on so quickly, and so many cancers can be cured now and managed now that couldn't be in the past. And I think the big challenge there is just to get people into the system early so that they can receive that treatment.
It needs to be caught while it's still retained within the prostate. And so, and it's conversations in the pub, with your mates. you've been to the loo a lot tonight.
Yeah.
You know, have you had a check? You know, it takes 5 minutes. You're entitled to a PSA test at your GP surgery. Go and get one done. And, you know, it's a simple blood test.
Do you think that guys down the pub, if I walked into a pub down the road where I live here and I spoke to some, I don't know, guys in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and I asked them if they understand what a PSA test is, what it involves, why it's important, who has access to it. Do you think they'd know?
No, they don't. And, and it's hard, now, because everyone I know, all my friends know what I've been through, they are all doing it. And they know now I'll beat them up if they don't. And a guy that I used to work with has got prostate cancer, but he found it in time when he could have the operation and have it removed. So, all these kind of things, it's a drip feed. It's casting a stone in the pond, isn't it, and getting the ripple effect out. But it's not enough. Far too many men are getting this. When I first had my diagnosis, I went back to the gym, and it was one of these ordinary open gyms, and I had a personal trainer. I was really fit before I started this illness thing. I was 34 waist, I was 80 kilos, and for someone of my age, and I was in pretty good nick. So I think that possibly helped. But I went to the gym and I said to the guys that were running the gym, I'd like to put this poster up about prostate cancer, about how to check it. It's, no, we don't want anything negative in here. We only deal with positive stuff. And what? At least half the guys in this gym are from black ethnic minority backgrounds. They are twice as likely to get it as I am, and so...
It's incredible that they wouldn't wait.
And you think, what the hell?
Yeah.
So I was really kind of angry about that.
So after all of this uncertainty, this bad news, followed by more uncertainty, more bad news, it was a real roller coaster, wasn't it? How did you sort of reset and reframe your mindset so that you could look forward? Was it to do with the fact that you had a plan, or what was it that helped you sort of reset into this positive mindset that we know you've got now?
I think plan is a bit of a bit of an optimistic word.
Yeah.
You take each day as it comes, but after that first oncology appointment, we came out of there and felt like we were a stone lighter, shoulders lifted. This isn't the be all and end all, right? There might be a few miles left in the tank yet. And the more we looked into it, the more we found that, the life chances are good. And but you can help yourself as well.
Yeah.
And staying positive is one thing, but also keeping yourself fit and active. One of the side effects of the hormone treatment is losing bone density. So your bones get weaker. You can help overcome that by making sure you're up on your vitamin D and stuff, but also building muscle strength, because your muscles around your bones protect them, and that was something that came across quite quickly in the research that we did. And I spoke to the oncologist and the oncology team about that, and they said, absolutely do that. And I think actually the problem I had most was the emotional side of it. And I went into the Homerton to meet the Macmillan's contact there. She was just great, absolutely wonderful, very understanding, very matter of fact, but let your emotions out for both my wife and I, and it's and I said, is there a man's group that I can go and talk to? Because I've looked on the Prostate Cancer UK site. There are men's groups all over the country, but not in London. How is that possible? Yeah. And she was wonderful. She said, well, there is a men's group, but it's been established for a long time, and they're mostly guys in their 80s. How about we look at doing a new group for younger patients, and perhaps not just prostate, but people with other cancers as well. And that sounds like a great idea. Anything I can do to help with that, I will, because it's I need to talk to someone. You can't just talk to your partner about it, and at this stage, I don't really want to talk to the psychologist team about it. This is something I'm trying to get my head around. I want someone who's either been on the same path as me and is ahead of me, or at the same stage as me.
That really rings a bell with me, Kevin. Actually, I know 5 or 6 years ago when my first wife died, you feel like you're in a hole. You feel, how am I going to get out of this? How will life ever get back to any sort of normality? How will I enjoy life again? And it was really important for me to find people who are maybe ahead of me in the journey, a similar journey, not the same, obviously, but something similar, where I could look at them and I could see that they were doing all right. And, that was so important. I think that is so important, Kevin.
And it's very life affirming.
Yeah.
Because you can see that others are on that same pathway of a sort. And it doesn't really matter which cancer it is, because once you've got it, you're on a journey. It's a kind of, all the cliches that we talk about are all true. They are cliches for a reason, and it gives us a chance to explain how we're feeling, and then you ask questions, of people who are in your same cohort. So at the group. Yeah, our drop-in was yesterday, and most Tuesdays, and and one of the guys says, "How are you getting on with your hot sweats?" And they always seem to be worse. I'm coming up to my next appointment. And I think that might be emotions kicking that off as much as anything, or stress might be a factor. That's not a medical diagnosis. That's a really anecdotal thing, but it's different for everybody, and everyone reacts differently. So a shared idea about what we're going through is also really good. And this guy's off to a funeral yesterday as well, and so his emotions are kind of all over the place. So we were able to offer that support to each other, and also partners who come into the group saying, I can't get my husband to come, or I can't get my wife to come, or whatever. Those of us who are in there can reassure them, look, we're fairly friendly here. We've all been there. And the lady I was sitting down talking to yesterday was saying I knew exactly what her husband was going through. He felt he couldn't come to a group. It wasn't for him. People won't know, they won't understand. It's different for me, and everything, all those negative thoughts that go through your mind I knew exactly what she was saying, and I said, well, I can't tell you the answer to that, but I can tell you if he comes here and talks to other people here, you'll find out we're all doing the same thing.
I know you're a big advocate for prehab, but before we hear maybe the impact that it had on you, Angela, could you just explain from your point of view, from a clinician's point of view, why it's so important?
So prehabilitation is bringing patients on board for exercises, healthy diet, and essentially getting people fitter to be able to undergo the cancer treatment, which can be quite grueling, whether it's hormones or surgery. So increasing the fitness levels so that patients can have treatment.
So Kevin, what impact did it have on you then?
I think it's been brilliant, quite honestly. It's been part of my positive journey for a start. The Macmillan's person referred me to the prehab program at the Homerton, and part of that is a gym session 3 times a week. It's a closed session, so it's the mini gym, or the junior gym at the local leisure centre. And so we have an hour 3 times a week, and there's a personal trainer, physio, dietitian, are all part of that. And that's really, really helpful. But what was interesting, I was there right at the start, or fairly near the start of the prehab program beginning, and there was only maybe half a dozen of us going. Now, the gym, that part of the gym is now full, and it's right across. It's an incredibly diverse group of people that go, all ages, all genders. It's as diverse a group of people as you could possibly imagine, and we're all at different stages. Some are coming in with walking sticks and can just hardly move, and there are some guys that are running. There's one lady there. She's absolutely brilliant. I won't mention her name, but she'd know who she is. When she first came, she'd never been in a gym in her life, and was really apprehensive. And the prehab technician was really good to her and said, "Look, come on, everybody here's the same. Don't worry. Let's just go on the walking machine." And when I went in yesterday, both of us got there early to the session. So we both grabbed the best running machines, which are at the far end, which have the fans that cool it down. We know our way around. But she runs. Goodness me, she runs. And she says she's never been fitter. And you think, wow, that's so positive. So for her, on her journey, that's just incredible that she's going to be so fit and active that whatever's being thrown at her, she will be in a better place to deal with it, both physically and mentally. Because if you're physically well, then mentally you're tougher, and the treatment, like you say, comes as quite savage, but it's better than the alternative.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we know that during your cancer, in inverted commas, journey, there's so much out of your control, isn't there? We can't really make an impact on whether the treatment works. There's so much that's beyond our control. And actually, this podcast is all about, taking control of cancer. What are the things that we can do to actually make an impact in different ways? And one of them, prehab, is a great example of something that we can do to take a little bit of control on our mental health, on our physical health. And it's really important, isn't it, Kevin?
Absolutely. I bought a bench to have at home so I can continue my weights.
Fantastic.
And things like that. We have got a walking machine. I'll try and find out how to unpack it and put it together. These things you can do for yourself. And just walking, getting off the bus one stop earlier, and just things like that. Watching your diet. We had a dietitian came and do a session there, and some of them in the group, I was astonished by the lack of knowledge of diet and how important it was, and what constitutes a vegetable. It really was quite eye-opening that some people in our group were, I don't like the word ignorant, but completely ill-informed about a balanced diet. And I was thinking, goodness me, we've got a lot of educational work to do here. And that changed their perception of what they were doing as well. And you can see the light bulbs go on almost, and you think, right, okay, that's a good thing to do. And the dietitian's there every week on the Wednesday. So if you want to talk to them, because a lot of the problem I have is I've put on weight, and that is a side effect of the hormone treatment. And I've gone up from 80 to 93 kilos. And that's an emotionally difficult thing to cope with. When you've been so fit, I've gone up 2 trouser sizes, and that's an expensive thing. So, but I'm trying my best to manage it as well as I can, but I'm not going to let it rule my life. I'm not going to give up everything that I find enjoyable in life, just because I put on a few extra pounds. I will manage it.
The sort of concept of positivity in cancer is really interesting, isn't it? I think, we'll have all heard it. Anybody that's got cancer will have heard people say, "Oh, you can beat this. Be positive." When actually, we know the reality is that positivity alone isn't gonna cure your cancer. But Angela, there are benefits to a positive mindset where you take a bit of control on of the things that you can take control of.
I agree, and how the survivorship of living with and beyond cancer. And again, alongside prehab, we're pleased to be able to offer psychological support, both during the diagnosis part of the pathway, but also afterwards. I think it's increasingly important as to how we can support.
Yeah, I took advantage of that. I've had sessions with the psychologist, and actually some of the psychology team came to our drop-in now on a Tuesday, and that's great because everyone's feeling a little bit anxious. They can go and talk, and that's terrific. But also, my partner's been able to access that as well because this is a journey for both of us. This is not just me doing this. I'm glad to say I have got a partner to support me going through this. And I think what I gained from talking to the psychologist about this was that I was in a better place than I thought I was. And we stopped the sessions because I felt I wasn't going, or we were going further than I wanted to go. I'm not in the mood to talk about end of life care yet. I know my care is kind of palliative, but it's not end of life. This is managing my condition. And so I'm not ready for that yet. I'm not ready for those discussions. So I'm not going to do them. And that's something I can take control of.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. Taking control of cancer, as I said, this is what this podcast is all about. Just as a way of kind of wrapping up, Kevin, if there's someone listening who maybe any of this rings a bell with, I don't know, maybe they don't even have any symptoms, but maybe they can access a PSA test, or they just want to know a little bit more, or there's something worrying them that maybe won't go away, not just prostate cancer, but across different kind of cancers. What would your message be to that person?
Well, first and foremost, what doctors have told you for years is true. Don't smoke. Don't drink to excess. Well, at least not too often. Try and keep your weight under control if you can. Those are all kind of basic stuff. But then, as you get to a certain age, there are milestones in your life where you become more susceptible to things. Know them, So once you get over 50, if you're a white male, go and get your PSA tested and get it tested every year. And don't let your doctors fob you off, your GPs fob you off with saying, oh, you don't need it. I want it and I'm entitled to it. So have it. If you're a black guy, it's earlier, 45, maybe even 40. We're seeing people diagnosed with prostate cancer in their 40s now, and which never seemed to happen before. Or maybe it was just I didn't know because I wasn't in that zone. So take control of that. Know your family history of cancer as well, because so many cancers are linked through. It's not hormonal; it's in the genes, isn't it? That make you more susceptible to it. So know what your family history of health is. Talk about it. Because it don't go away by putting your head in the sand and not doing anything about it. So you can take control of your own life, basically, and don't be afraid to talk about it, because the last thing you want to do is think it's not going to happen to me, because it does happen to me, and thinking that it won't change a thing.
That's fantastic advice, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining me today. Angela as well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that wraps up the second episode of Taking Control of Cancer, the podcast brought to you by the North East London Cancer Alliance. If you want to check out other episodes, we put one out before this, a really interesting one with Professor Charles Knight from St Bartholomew's Hospital. We've got loads and loads more amazing episodes coming up, some fantastic guests, and I really hope you stick with us. In the meantime, check out the North East London Cancer Alliance on social media, and we will speak to you next time.